Hi, my name is Edie Hapner, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about my favorite area of research, the aging voice. The older I get, the more I appreciate it. And today we're going to talk about the aging voice from bench to bedside. You know, in this country, everybody is fighting aging. We want to fight it to stay young. Recently, there was an article published that by 2014, there should be a pill available that will extend your life. And people are even believing that aging is a curable disease. Well, the Census Bureau has actually told us a little bit about that. Like, we agrees with that people are living longer. If you look at this chart, what you'll notice that in the early 1900s, people only lived till about 47 years old. But by 2004, 10 years ago, people were living till 77 years old. And now the Census Bureau believes that the average life expectancy for males and females is about 78 years old. Some fascinating trivia. Social Security was started in 1936, and if you look at that chart, in 1936, very few people lived till the age of 65. Medicare came about in 1966, and in 1966, not a lot of people were living beyond 65 to 70, but things are changing now. If you look at this chart, you can see the rapid expansion of people over the age of 65 and what it's expected to be. As a matter of fact, in 2011, there were 41 million people in this country over the age of 65. And in just 9 years, there's an expected 40% increase in that number to 56 million people. As a matter of fact, this is the first time in history where there's more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 65. Some of our famous icons are aging. And as a matter of fact, in 2011, the first baby boomer started collecting Social Security. You know, retirement used to be about fun and living on the money that you saved, spending time with family, getting to do all the hobbies that you wanted to do. But retirement now has changed. Unfortunately, with the downturn in the job market, people are losing their jobs, and older people are being downsized because they cost too much money. With the downturn in the financial market, people have lost money. They've lost the savings that they've worked for to retire on. With the downturn in the real estate market, people have lost their homes and they've been foreclosed on. And finally, there's a whole new generation called the boomerang generation, and these are my children's age, who are going to good colleges, getting great degrees, and not able to get good jobs. Boomerang because they're moving home, so their parents aren't able to sell their homes and downsize and retire. As a matter of fact, about 25% of people 65 and older now don't think they'll ever be able to retire. So why did retirement at 65 happen anyway? Well, retirement, even Social Security, was based on the concept that changes happen to our bodies physiologically that prevent our ability to function at that high level of independence we had done during our 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s. Things like loss of lean muscle mass, less flexibility in the joints, a slower reaction time, and even less available oxygen to fuel our muscles. You know, interestingly enough, these very same changes also happen in the larynx, and they affect our voice. Let's listen to a voice now that I'm sure you'll all agree is someone over the age of 65.
Rainbow is a division of white light into many beautiful colors. These take the shape of a long, round arch.
Even without seeing this gentleman, knowing his name, or knowing anything about him, you know that he's older than 65 years old. And that's because of the sound of his voice. So what happens in the larynx? In the larynx, the vocal folds start to atrophy, just like the rest of the body, less lean muscle mass. We have some loss of respiratory drive. We don't have as much air to help us function as we used to. We have a loss of vocal flexibility, so the voice tends to be narrowed into a smaller range. And all of those impacted the way you heard that man and believed that he was over the age of 65. But before we go on, let's make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to start using some words that I want you to understand what they mean and that we're all thinking the same thing when I say them. Presbylaryngus is age-related changes to the larynx, that vocal fold atrophy, things that happen to the vocal folds themselves as a result of aging. Presbyphonia is what speech pathologists work with, and that is age-related changes to the voice as a result of presbylaryngus. And lastly, let's talk about what's considered old. Sadly, the term elderly applies to anyone over the age of 65. And I know a whole lot of people that are going to argue about that. But to make us feel better, there's the young old, 65 to 74. There's the old, 75 to 84. And there's the oldest old, 85 and above. Let's also make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. So this is a very interesting definition of aging. Aging has been defined as a collection of changes that render human beings progressively more likely to die. Not being so morbid. Let's talk about some aging to the vocal folds and to the larynx. What happens? The cartilages start to calcify. The joints develop arthritis. The thyroarytenoid muscle, or the vocal folds, begin to atrophy. And there's actually a decrease in neuromuscular junctions, which you all know means that the information from the brain to the larynx to tell it to work is slowed and not as responsive as it used to be. What does this do to the voice? Presbyphonia. There's pitch changes. Men develop a higher pitched voice. Women develop a lower pitched voice. It's kind of like we're kids. We come to the middle again. And all of us have a smaller, usable pitch range. We have decreased vocal intensity, increased noise in our voice, and increased vocal fatigue. And something a little scary, reduced cough strength. And that can affect people's ability for pulmonary toilet, which sounds like a funny word, but really means our ability to clear mucus and food and things out of our airway that can make us aspirate and even die. So, good study was done. As a matter of fact, several of them have been done, and they've all resulted in pretty much the same numbers. 20% of people over 65 years old report voice problems. 20%, that's huge. If you think about it, we think of 4 to 6% in the school-age generation. And of that 20%, 80% of those people say that their voice problem alone affects their quality of life. That's really also pretty impressive. So, what does aging mean to the speech pathologist? If the population of people over 65 is growing exponentially, if more people are going to have to work beyond 65 years old because of all the things that have happened to our savings and our lives, if changes to the voice are a part of aging, are inevitable, if 1/4 of the U.S. workforce, or 37 million people, rely on their voice to do their jobs, then research on aging voice must find its way into the therapy room. We must develop treatments to treat aging voice. We must reduce age-related occupational voice injuries. Even if we're just thinking about the cost to health care, it's huge. And we must do this because ultimately we all want to help improve the quality of life of our patients. Does anybody have any questions?